the reason accountability works, and I feel like this is important to mention, is there's two great motivators in life, right? There's the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of discomfort or pain, right? What accountability does is it leverages the latter, which is the avoidance of social confrontation, of you not doing what you committed to someone else you were going to do. And on the days when you don't feel like doing something, the pain of doing it is less than the pain of disappointing someone else.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. B, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. And welcome in. Today, we're going to have somebody to really give you the tools of understanding self-improvement and human potential. You know, so many times we desire for us to have a better life, whether it be in our health, in our relationships, in our businesses, but we often get pulled back. We often sabotage ourselves. There would be a new year that comes through and we could maybe walk towards our goals for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and all of a sudden go back to a standard way of living. Why do we stop ourselves? And what are the things that we can do to break free and break through some of those self-imposed limitations? Today, we're going to have a guest to unpack why we sabotage ourselves, why we might leak into procrastination, and the things that we can start doing right now to start walking and stepping into the life we know we are meant to have. Now, before we get into this conversation, I just want to welcome in all the newcomers to the Thrive State Podcast. It is really an honor to be able to share these tools and insights with world thought leaders in longevity, epigenetics, medicine, health, relationships, business, to get you into the Thrive State, for you to be able to realize the gift that you are to the world. If you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. We could certainly use all of your support to make this message, this podcast, this mission and movement grow out there in the universe. So please do us a favor by subscribing to the podcast, engaging with it in the comments below, sharing it with your friends and family members, and also leaving us a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. This is really going to help inject fuel into the mission that we are building here at Thrive State. And as a free gift, I want to give you a toolkit, 10 weeks of workbooks and modules for you to take yourself to the next level, to understand the habits to install, to elevate your life, how to decrease or actually break down the habits that are pulling you down in your life, and the most important pillars in your life to control the messages you are giving to yourselves on a daily basis. You can get that toolkit absolutely for free by going to mythrivestate.com/toolkit. And if you haven't already, pick up a copy of the second edition of my book, Thrive State. It is a #1 bestseller in the fields of longevity and preventative medicine, and it's really going to give you the framework for you to take your life to the next level. Pick up a copy at thrivestatebook.com. Now, my very next guest is somebody that has serendipitously entered my life in so many different ways. I actually met him through Dave Meltzer. He's also done a lot of mental health work in the nonprofit sector. He has got a heart of gold, and he's been putting out a daily podcast, Self-Improvement Daily, for many years now. So you can just see the dedication he has to his work. And he is somebody that actually has really mastered the science and the neuroscience of behavior and human potential. So if you want to listen to this podcast, listen with open mind, but prepare to take your notebooks out, because he's really going to give you some practical tools for you to set in the habits to take your life to the next level. My podcast guest is Brian Ford. He's the host and founder of the top-rated Self-Improvement Daily podcast, where he has shared his 3-minute personal development insights every day for over 6 years and has received more than 20 million downloads. Think about it, 20 million downloads. That's how important his work has been and has resonated with the people out there. He's also the co-founder of the For Purpose Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to making it easier to make a difference and helping people convert their intention to do good into actual tangible actions. And that's what personal development is really all about. It's really the intention to lift yourself up, the intention to remember the truest version of you, that you were made here to be connected and to serve something much higher than yourself. And once you're able to tap into that, you'll find that life flows much easier. Life is much joyous, much more gratifying. So if this is something you want more of, you'll definitely want to listen to this conversation with myself and my good friend, Brian Ford. Brian Ford, and welcome to the Thrive State Podcast.
Dr. V, what's up, brother? Good to see you.
I am super excited for the audience to get to know you because there is so much out there in the health space and the entrepreneurial space in terms of what we can be as people. And we're often given the recipe for how to do these things. And everybody wants to apply this recipe at the beginning of the year and say, this is my life, this is who I want to be. And then boom, we fall short. And so if you're experienced that before in the past, you're going to want to listen to this podcast because this guy is the master of managing ourselves and taking us to the next level. So thank you for being on.
Yeah, I appreciate the acknowledgement there. And yeah, let's roll.
All right. Before we get into your genius, we have a portion on the top of the show called the 5 to Thrive. 5 quick questions brought out of midair, 1,000 points each. And if you win, a healthy meal on me. So my question to you, Brian Ford, are you ready to play the 5 to Thrive?
Yes, sir.
Question number 1. What was your favorite childhood memory?
The one that comes to mind, which is really interesting, is there was a race called the Spirit Run back where I grew up in Southern California. And I was a student athlete, so I was always one of the more athletic kids. I was also known for being a fast runner, and this is a mile-long race. And I was probably 6 or 7 years old. The memory that just came to mind for whatever reason is I wanted to win this race. I get started. Someone bumps me. I trip and fall. I skin my knee. I cry. I see my mom, my dad. They're kind of there to support me. They're like, you can finish the race. I get up and I still win it. And that, I think, just kind of taught me a huge lesson about what it means to follow through on what you say you're going to do, to bounce back, to be resilient. And I think it was a core memory. I haven't really told that story before, but that's what came to mind when you asked it.
Wow. I can't wait to dive more into that story in the meat of our podcast. 1,000 points there. Question number 2 is, if you could have a superpower, what would that be?
Wow. I would say to inspire. If I could have a superpower, it'd be to inspire. I believe the greatest wasted resource in the world is human intention. And if I could inspire people to convert intention into action, I think the world would be a much better place.
Ooh. So much good stuff. I can't wait to dive into the meat already. Question number 3 is, I put you in front of 100,000 people, put TV cameras all over you, handed you a mic and had you sing a karaoke song. Which song would that be?
3 a.m. by Matchbox 20.
Oh, wow. Didn't take you long to answer that one. 3,000 points. Question number 4 is, what one book, quote, phrase, or lesson did you came into your world, and when you had access to that quote, phrase, book, lesson, that life completely just turned upside down?
Sure. Yeah, I'd say Aristotle. We are what we repeatedly do.
Wow. This is all feeding into the genius of our conversation later on. So that's great. And last question for you is, after a long week, once you get really triggered, anxious, worried, stressed, whatever it is, what is your favorite tool to get grounded? A reset?
Cuddles with my wife.
5,000 points. You win the 5 to Thrive, and I'm pretty sure people can find your wife when they feel stressed, but hopefully they have somebody else in their life they could do that with, and oh, so important to be able to do that. And I notice when I get into an argument or certainly triggered, if we can get ourselves to a place where we can cuddle, oxytocin, we know, goes up in our body, and our nervous system just, deregulates. And so that's really, really awesome. Dude, I'm excited to dive in here. Just like the opening of the podcast, so much of our ability to create the health, the love, the relationships, the businesses that we want in our life ultimately comes down to how we manage ourselves. So my question to you is, and we got a hint of this earlier, was that lesson you learned as a kid where you just got right back up when you got knocked down and you won the thing anyway. And I'm sure it instilled a belief that you can always get back up and stay committed to what you're doing. Now, not everybody does this. And so you might already know the stats. I don't know the stats, but how many people set New Year's resolutions and don't complete it, or have a goal of health, of losing weight, and don't get it done? So the question really is, do you think this discipline or ability to be able to follow through comes in very early in life? And those people that don't have it yet, how do they start to, instill more of this into their life?
Yeah, no, I think it's a skill, and I think skills can be learned and trained, right? So sure, some people might have been raised in environments where they cultivate a belief system that supports them in being more resilient, more disciplined, right? They experience different things and it molds them in that way. But that's not to say that it's a life sentence if you don't have that, right? There's always an opportunity to develop that and grow that for yourself. So the practice, and it ties into one of the questions that you asked, my favorite quote from Aristotle, "We are what we repeatedly do." That gives us the mechanism to changing our belief system and our mindset, which is you got to consistently take a certain action and allow that to be the proof and evidence that then justifies who we believe ourselves to be, the type of person that we see ourselves as. So from the lens of being self-disciplined or resilient, when you start to intentionally highlight different instances from your past or from a day to say, hey, I was resilient because of this, or I was disciplined and I did that, what you're doing is you're training your mind and your awareness to start seeing all of the evidence that's stacking as positive proof of, yes, I am this person, instead of the negativity bias that's saying, no, I'm not that person, here's why. So it's just shifting the flashlight of where you're looking at your life and the evidence of your life is enough to be able to reroute that identity. And being intentional about creating those moments of reflection and consciousness to be able to initiate that thought pattern is the juice that then drives the quote, "We are what we repeatedly do." You got to be consistent, build systems to be able to support the consistency.
Oftentimes when you're in that state of that negative mindset, it's very difficult from that state to go, oh, I'm going to now think of this resource in the past. So do you find it useful to have maybe a couple of these? I think David Goggins has a word for them. I don't know, Scooby snacks or
the cookie jar is what he calls it.
Right. Yeah. Do you feel like they should have a couple of those handy so that once they start to find themselves in a place where they're going down that negative path, to be able to short circuit, that pattern to start maybe choosing something else in that moment?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'd say there's two different time frames to think about how to interrupt the pattern. So of course, if you're triggered, if you're emotional, you're going to want to try and reroute that physiology to be able to support you in a more productive way. So yeah, having the examples already on hand that, you just kind of do the work in advance to say, hey, in these situations, you don't have to think of them in a moment where you're pissed off. You're like, oh, that's right, I can remember them when I'm pissed off, So being able to have some of those in advance is super helpful. But I think the more sustainable practice is having dedicated time carved out on a daily basis just to audit how you're doing. Because sure, maybe you were triggered in the moment and you weren't able to effectively reroute that. But when you separate from that moment, that evening, and you reflect on, okay, why was I so triggered? What could I have done differently? Oh, I could have thought about this. I could have related with it that way. What you're doing is you're bringing consciousness to a moment that you handled unconsciously. And when you bring that consciousness, now the next time you're in that moment, you're more likely to be primed to see the things that you're trying to tell yourself to see. So there is this kind of immediate short-term practice of, let me reroute and try and be really tactical about shifting perspective. But the more sustainable and kind of like awareness driving practice is just to do daily reflection and to ask yourself good questions to get good answers and to be able to prompt that awareness so that it's continued on and woven in the next experience that you have where you want to use it.
That's great. Have you found it to be better to do in the morning, in the evening? And what type of prompts do you use to sort of, for people who've never done this before, that are best to be able to highlight? I think eventually once you start to understand yourself, you'll kind of already know how to best reflect. But for somebody who's just starting, what might be some starter type of prompts to get them going?
Totally. Yeah, no, great question. So I find that the end of the day is the best time to do it, because what you can do is bundle in a bunch of good questions at once that relate to what you did over the course of the day. So instead of treating all of these in isolation, you can be really efficient and centralize your reflection at one time and make sure that it's still top of mind and it's fresh because you experienced it over the course of the day and now you're reflecting at the end. So one of the things that I'm working on, talk about a money mindset or whatever it is, one of the things I'm working on in my coaching business is I want to see that I'm offering more value to my clients, right? And there are times when I get a text message or something, and my belief system sees that text message as, without even reading the message, I'm like, oh, they want to cancel. Oh, they're upset. Oh, they want a refund. Oh, and that's the belief system, the unconscious piece that I'm trying to retrain. So what I do is consciously reflect at the end of every day. I find evidence, an instance of, oh no, when did I offer and over deliver value for a client today? And then the more that I train myself to see that at night, the more I unconsciously see the stimuli that pop up through that same perspective the next day. So that's one example. And the same thing with abundance, right? So I'm trying to cultivate abundance. So I reflect every single day on what's one thing that I did to help someone unconditionally. And then the second question is, how did I receive help unconditionally? Because that's what abundance is. It's give and take. It's flowing. It's allowing things to flow through you and not getting in the way of whatever is meant to come through, right? So those are a few examples of real questions I ask myself on a nightly basis to be able to audit my day. And we were talking about earlier, to kind of prime my belief system and my perspective to be able to support the mindsets that I want to carry into the next day.
That's a really great time to reflect. I agree with you in the evening. Do you start yourself in the morning with a routine that kind of primes yourself for what that day will look like?
Totally. Yeah. No, so I have a morning routine. I experiment with it, kind of integrate different pieces. One of the core things that I really enjoyed doing that was also kind of part of the mindset development was brainstorming one bold action I could take during the day, and it's, again, separating from the moment of actually doing it. It's like, okay, what is that one bold action that I can take and then make that a win by following through on it that day? So it's a way to be able to create momentum and to be able to have clarity of what's going to move the needle without having to emotionally commit, actually do it right then and there. And it's that emotional feeling that self-sabotage comes in and tells us, oh, let me get distracted, let me procrastinate, let me do something else. It completely reroutes your thinking. Whereas being able to say, hey, let me identify it here, follow through for it there, it creates enough distance where, stimuli and response aren't so closely connected, not so triggering.
Cool. What was your bold action for today?
No, so I used to do that. That. But so that was one of my favorites. I don't have my morning routine currently. I've evolved it in different ways. Now I'm kind of investing more time in actually a specific meditation, which is bringing in specific virtues I want to embody throughout the day. So I picture the last day. Where did I show up as the best version of myself? Where didn't I, and what could I have done better? And then I visualize the next day and what's on my calendar and how I can kind of embody the energy. So I'm taking more time in my meditation and visualization than doing that specific practice.
Beautiful. Now, I've got a two-part question, or potentially they're just two questions. You could either answer them together, integrate them together, or answer them separately, but I feel that they're semi-related. Question number one is, what is the source of the self-sabotage and the procrastination? Why do we have that? And then the other question is, what exactly is the foundation for self-improvement?
Yeah, cool. Different questions. It all ties together because it's all kind of coordinated. Self-sabotage, that is a big topic. So taking steps back, right? So kind of thinking about what is self-sabotage. So self-sabotage is this unconscious force that our mind puts on our behavior to prevent us from doing the things we consciously want to do, right? So we're rerouting the actions that we're taking. Well, what is the source of self-sabotage? Why do we do that? We wouldn't want to choose to sabotage ourselves. So something's happening unconsciously. What is initiating that? And the answer is, people's favorite psychological term, which is cognitive dissonance. So when people experience cognitive dissonance, basically it means that they believe two beliefs to be true at the same time that are in conflict. One that was an unconscious expectation, and one that is being suggested by the way you're currently living life. Comes back to Aristotle's, we are what we repeatedly do. We are is identity, repeatedly do is the behavior. So if we have a certain expectation of who we're going to be, and we take action in a way that's different than who we expected, now there's those two beliefs that are happening at the same time. In order to eliminate this tension, this cognitive dissonance from happening, the unconscious mind can engage in two things. The first one is self-sabotage, and the second is the greatest catalyst for growth and prosperity in our life. I'll get to that after I explain self-sabotage. So self-sabotage literally prevents this new conscious, empowering, productive, healthy, whatever behavior so that you don't create the conflicting belief that's different than your current identity and belief system. So that's procrastination, as you mentioned, is one. Perfectionism, imposter syndrome, fear, anxiety, stress, getting distracted, being confused, overgeneralizing, rational thinking or rationalizing, right? All of these things accomplish the same thing, which is they keep you from taking the action that you consciously want to do. Distraction, oh, let me do something else. Imposter syndrome, oh, I'm not good enough for that. Procrastination, I'll do it later, right? All of these are examples of things that stop our behavior. Now, once we work through that, and despite the fear, limiting beliefs, the doubt, the procrastination, the negative self-talk, all of those things that are self-sabotage, if we take action anyway, and we do so consistently, cognitive dissonance, these two conflicting beliefs, need to be reconciled in a different way. And if you can't prevent the behavior from happening and the belief that's associated with that new behavior, you must update the original unconscious belief to match the new belief that's been created. And that's called identity-based behavior change, right? You actually upgrade your belief system, and that's where it becomes the mechanism of growth, because no longer do you need to consciously tell yourself to eat healthy, to get into the gym, to be more present in conversations. If you do it enough times, you eventually train your mind that that's how you do it on autopilot. And it becomes the unconscious force, the unconscious pathway. So that's self-sabotage, and how when you're experiencing the fear, the doubt, the lack of motivation, the negative self-talk, all of that is evidence that you're just need to pierce through that to get into that next tier of growth, which is identity-based behavior change. So that's the first side of things. Second question was about self-improvement and the real foundation of self-improvement, right? So the reason that self-sabotage exists and the reason that it restricts us so much and creates this resistance is because it's trying to prevent a certain behavior. What do we call our attempts to take action despite not feeling like it? Discipline, right? Being disciplined. I don't feel like it. Well, take action anyway. So if we're disciplined, despite the emotional response, despite the distraction, the mind's attempts to keep us from taking action, we're disciplined to what we committed to anyway, that's going to support us in the transformation. So discipline is one of the foundations of self-improvement, because we need to follow through on the things we committed to get the results that we're after, okay? But also, the second piece of this is, okay, it's enough to take action. What if you don't know what action to take? What if you don't know what's contributing to the results that you want? What if you aren't aware of what's happening? That's where awareness and consciousness is the second foundation, because you need to be able to support your action taking with enough ideas to then to be disciplined and take action on the right one. So as long as you're always growing in your self-discipline, you're always growing in your personal consciousness, you're going to be following through in the trajectory of the person that you want to become. And without either of those things, you can't get into good habits. You can't enforce good routines. You can't be more connected in conversations. You can't optimize and get feedback on what's working and what's not, because you're not doing anything anyway, or you're not doing the right things that you know are producing results for you anyway. So that's why it's the foundation. You've got to start there and build on top of it.
Hey, it's Dr. V. Going to take a quick break from the show to talk to you about one of my very favorite biohacks. It is the very compact Kien Vuu Plus Pro. I take it with me wherever I travel. I leave it at home as well, because it's one of these things that uses patented laser red light therapy to go deep into the tissues to reduce inflammation and to reduce pain. I travel all the time. I work out. I've got these aches and pains that are everywhere. This device has been game changing. There are also some studies suggesting using this can reduce systemic inflammation as well. To find out more about the device, you can go to their website, kinion.io, or check out the website I did with their founder, Forrest Smith, on episode 181 of the Thrive State podcast. And as a loyal listener to the show, you actually get a very special discount by using the code ThriveStatePC. That's ThriveStatePC for podcast. Trust me, this is one investment in your health and your wellness that you won't forget. So go ahead, get the Vuu Plus Pro today to take your performance, your health, and get rid of pain for good. Okay, now back to the show. Now, discipline is something so many people want to be able to take a pill for.
Yeah.
And I've asked a few people like this, and I don't remember there being like a great answer. But how do people start to, develop that? other than the grind and the pain of actually, going through and doing something like that. So many people give up and they just, again, tell themselves the story was just, I'm not built for that. So how do you shortcut or short circuit that process that I think so many people are struggling with?
Yeah, we've already talked about the process. It's just a different skin on top of it. It's this consistent action creates a new identity, right? We repeatedly do. So how can we repeatedly be disciplined? So I actually, in my coaching, and one of the things that I have in place to support people in developing discipline is I have a subconscious priming audio program related to being self-disciplined. So what you do is you build a habit around accessing these affirmations. Every single day you listen to positive priming and suggestions related to, I don't break the promises I make to myself. I follow through on doing what I say I'm going to do. And then in your daily reflection, you see that you're getting consistent in these key areas. And at the end of every subconscious priming audio, you click a button that reinforces the identity you're cultivating, which is, that's like me, I'm self-disciplined. And you do that day after day after day after day after day after day for 21 days, you're changing the conversation happening in your mind, where the next time that you're considering if you're going to take action or not, oh, well, I'm kind of tired, maybe I shouldn't go to the gym, or, oh yeah, I can have a cheat day today, or, oh, I'm just going to scroll an extra 10 minutes on social media. When you have the awareness to know, no, I don't want to do that, and you need the discipline to follow through on rerouting your behavior, now this script from the priming comes to your mind to say, I don't break the promises I make to myself. I follow through just like I said I would, right? That's like me. I'm self-disciplined. So that's where people need to start. I mean, the mechanism is the same, is you consistently do disciplined things.
Yeah.
But you can lower the barrier to entry and highlight what the identity is, the belief system that you're trying to create, to make it more potent in that effort, right? And that's what this subconscious priming audio does. It's 3 minutes where you don't have to do anything but listen and do some positive poses where it's, it initiates positive physiology so that you have a strong association with the words that are being said, so that you don't run away from discipline, but you actually embrace it, right? Your body connects with it positively. So it's all built into this. And then because you are consistent, because you see your streak stacking up, like, oh, wow, I guess I am consistent. You're now providing evidence that you must be disciplined. And then that mindset is what applies into everything else. And then it's the extra evidence of being consistent with other things that starts to really feed the flywheel of you ingraining that belief in a deeper way.
That's awesome. And as you were explaining that, I know tons of people are going to be like, okay, how do I get access to this 3-minute exercise? So rather than ask you at the end, how do people get access to that?
Yeah. So the kind of the core transformational process that I run people through, this is the staple of my self-management system, is a 21-day challenge, where what you do is you install a new self-improvement operating system. The quick punchline to that is, we don't need more information. We need a new engine to be able to better use the information we already have. So think of, it's not putting fuel in a car's gas tank. It's actually upgrading the engine that you're using all that fuel for. That's how you go faster. That's how you go better. That's how you get better results. Okay. So you kind of create this new performance tracking system, and there's a progression to it so that it becomes more robust over time. And habit stacked into that new meta habit that is this performance tracking system is access to the 21-day subconscious priming audio. So you're showing up every single day for your performance tracking. You're showing up every single day for your, it's called Discipline on Demand, subconscious priming audio. Do that for 21 days, completely changes your relationship with self-discipline. Happens every time. It's crazy.
Wow. Okay. And do you have a link for people to access this challenge?
Yeah, so it's grow.selfimprovementdailytips.com/super-habits-system. So it's a mouthful.
We'll go ahead and include it into the show notes. And I just wanted to add, give yourself the real opportunity for success, because if you are physically, mentally, emotionally drained, it's harder to exert that discipline. So if you're not sleeping well, if you're eating inflammatory foods, if your emotional health is off, if you're having a bad day with the people around you, it's harder to make that. So really, look into the principles of the Thrive state, because that will give you the best access for you to maintain consistency in what you do. And certainly, Certainly having accountability is super important. Why don't you speak to accountability, and do you use it? Do you have people in your life that or maybe even an accountability system that might not be real life people, but how important do you think accountability is in getting the results that we want?
Accountability is everything. It's absolutely everything. So in this 21-day challenge, the way that it works is I show up personally and check in on every single person that goes through the challenge every single day to make sure that they're filling out their scorecard, that they're doing their performance tracking, they're completing discipline on demand. If you don't, I call you out, I text you, I ask what's going on. We can understand what the plan is moving forward to help you get more consistent. I have a daily accountability thread where I talk about, I don't do my one bold action, but I do have my one goal for the day that I have an accountability group I share with. I have a community that I run, which is my primary way of coaching people, where we have a main priority accountability thread every single day. We report on our main priority, our progress on it. So it is absolutely essential. And the reason accountability works, and I feel like this is important to mention, is there's two great motivators in life, right? There's the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of discomfort or pain, right? What accountability does is it leverages the latter, which is the avoidance of social confrontation, of you not doing what you committed to someone else you were going to do. And on the days when you don't feel like doing something, the pain of doing it is less than the pain of disappointing someone else. And that's for evolutionary reasons of belonging and everything. So if we can leverage that, we can use accountability, it gets us to follow through on the things, even when we don't feel like it, defeat self-sabotage when it comes up until we create that identity-based transformation. So the accountability supports us in actually feeding the mechanism that is going to ultimately change our mindset, change our belief system, change our life. And that's where you're, really clever in the way that you're thinking about this. Behavior equals action, right? You do a behavior, it equals action. That creates a certain result in our life, right? So if we want different results, we've got to do different actions. But instead of just telling ourselves, hey, take action, do it, willpower, right? The best way to be able to support your behavior is through identity. But if you don't have the identity in place and the unconscious influence isn't there yet, then the next best way is to create systems, right? Systems of execution, systems of accountability, systems of setting up your environment, systems of processes, systems of efficiency. All of these things make the barrier to entry lower for any given action. When you invest in the system around the behavior comes easier. When the behavior is easier, it's more consistent. When it's more consistent, it eventually leads to that new identity. So the point of intervention is by building the system. Accountability is a form of system.
Beautiful. Let's talk a little bit about, once they've installed these systems, they're going to be more productive. And productivity is one of these things that so many people just, get so strung up about. I need to be productive. I didn't have a good day today because I wasn't productive.
Yeah.
Now, why are people misaligning themselves with the idea of being more productive? And what should they be aligning themselves with instead?
Yeah, no, you're right. There's this huge interest in, let me just get through my list and crush the day and get everything done. And I think the idea of productivity is misunderstood. It's not about getting as much done as you can in a day. What it is, it's about doing what you want to do in a day. And that could be not productive activities per society, but if it's personally productive, that's all. If it's what you want to do, then it's productive, right? So there's a redefinition of productivity, but I even think there's one thing that's better than productivity that actually speaks more to that new definition I just shared, which is the idea of intentionality. I feel like we should be optimizing around being as intentional as possible, which comes back to the foundation of self-improvement, awareness, knowing what we want to do in different given situations, right? So when we're intentional, we have standards set, we have protocols in place, we're conscious of the impacts of every decision that we're making. And with that consciousness, now we can actually step into the life that we want to have rather than inherit the life that's by default around us. So when we evaluate, how intentional was I? How did I fill my relationships, my conversations, my exercise routine, my diet, my work life, my projects? If I can make sure that I'm doing the right thing within all of those as often as possible, that's an intentional life. And that is the North Star that we actually want to chase. That's what actually fulfills us. is feeling like we're making the absolute most out of life. And that's not by going through a checklist and getting everything done. It's by creating a harmony of elements that make us feel as alive as possible. And it's intentionality that serves that to us.
That's so good. I mean, I can go deeper into spiritual stuff, but I'll save that for another conversation. One of the things that I love that you talk about, and I think it's really neat because other people who talk about habits, we've got 2 books in this space that kind of talk about similar issues. One is Tiny Habits by my friend BJ Fogg, and then the other one, Atomic Habits by James Clear, just different adjectives that mean the same thing. But you talk about super habits.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, so it's interesting because it's all the same stuff, right? And it's different skins on it. But I think the idea of super habits is what it does is it suggests that there are small things that you can do that create disproportionate results. And that's what Atomic Habits at its core is really about. It's like, what are the small things you can do consistently? But the super habits itself, they're prescribed and they're specific to being our most energetic, most mentally resilient, and most productive version of ourselves by the right definition of those terms, right? And what the super habits do, I can go through examples of what they are because they're different than just, hey, exercise every day. That's not a super habit. What the super habits are is they do the work behind the scenes. It's the advanced planning. It's the environmental design. It's the pre-commitments. It's all of those systems that we talked about. It's doing those things consistently so that you have the systems consistently in place that then support the macro habit that delivers the results that you want in your life, which is exercising and eating healthy and getting rest and all those, right? So for example, the 3 energy super habits, right? First one, it's not to exercise every day. It's to plan your exercise the day before. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? When are you going to do it? That's the habit. That habit itself takes 90 seconds to do. But then you are so much more likely to follow through on your workout routine the next day because you invested that 90 seconds, okay? Second super habit within your diet, reflect 1 through 5. How healthy was my diet today? It brings that moment of consciousness at the end of your day to say, oh, you know what? I had too much snacks there, didn't need sugar there. Oh, I could have maybe substituted this for that there. And then the next time that you're making that decision, you're out to eat, you're like, oh, that's right. I've got to answer to the choices I make right now. Let me choose the healthy option, right? So that's a super habit as well. It's the accountability to what you chose to eat, okay? And the third super habit is related to recovery. And it kind of ties into this larger philosophy of your performance tracking routine, right? This is something you do every single night. What it means is your alarm goes off as your trigger to say, hey, complete this routine. You respond to it, you complete your nighttime routine, and you get to bed on time, right? So instead of wrapping up your day slowly, oh, let me do this one thing, and just kind of slowly delaying your time to sleep, because we all know that your day starts the night before, right? Because you need to get the full amount of sleep. Your day starts the night before. When you are in the super habit of actually starting your night routine at the right time, right? The super habit isn't to sleep 8 hours. The super habit is to start your night routine at the right time, because that sets up the environment and the process and the momentum to then follow through on the core behavior, which is to sleep for 8 hours, right? So that's what I mean by super habits. They're these small, potent, high leverage things that take moments to do, but create these outstanding disproportionate results in your life because they set up the key behaviors for success.
You know, I was just sort of thinking, how would that last super habit change once you start having kids? But I was also thinking that if you had that habit in place, this is something that if they're exposed to it ever since they're infants, this is something that just becomes ingrained and a habit within them as well. So
Totally.
Beautiful stuff. Dude, I think people really had great access to understanding themselves, understanding what stops them, but particularly really understand the core tenets of what they need to do to step into the very best versions of themselves. So thank you for sharing this conversation with us today. Now, I know you've got 9 super habits. You've only shared 3 of them. How do people get access, learn more about you, and get access to the 9 super habits training?
Yeah. So the 21-day challenge is called the 21-day super habits challenge that I've been alluding to. So what you do is in this challenge, you have your performance tracking system. You install the 9 super habits, one of those being the discipline super habit, the subconscious priming audio. The best way to check all of that out is to visit my podcast, right? So I've got a daily podcast. I've had it for over 6 years, over 20 million downloads. Very grateful to have grown an audience through there. It's only 3 to 4 minutes a day. Self-Improvement Daily is what it's called. Go ahead, check that out. If you like that, in the description, you'll be able to find access to the 9 Super Habits worksheet and ways to get involved in the 21-day challenge should you want to.
That's beautiful. Is that something that's kind of ongoing that you do, or people kind of like coming in and out anytime they want? Is it a...
Yeah, no, it's rolling enrollment. So a new challenge starts every Monday. So if you're ready to go, then I'll see you Monday.
Beautiful. My brother, thank you so much for what you have provided for us. And with everything that you've done, I'm really curious as to what your answer is for this one. But what in your life, and it could be as physical, metaphysical, or literal or illiteral as you want, but what has been your best medicine?
Yeah, my best medicine, it kind of comes back to Robert Waldinger's work related to longevity studies and overall wellness. I'm sure you could recite it better than anyone. Essentially, it's social fitness, right? Like our social relationships are the highest predictor of our overall wellness. And, you know, my best medicine is I do 2 things every single day that are on my scorecard, on my performance tracking sheet that I'm accountable to every single day. And I've got systems and everything in place to make sure I follow through on them. It's 1, email my grandma, let her know that I love her. I ask her a specific question to initiate conversation, to strengthen and build that relationship. And 2nd is I text my mom that I love her and appreciate her every single day. Make sure that she knows that. And if I do that, then I know some of the most important women and people in my life know that they're cared for, know that there's someone thinking about them. And then, you know, everything else from life is just, you know, it's just a cherry on top.
That's beautiful. And I think I really want to probably insert a version of that to the close people in my life. So thank you for sharing that, brother. Such a great conversation. I learned so much personally from it. Wish you all the best of luck and success. And thank you for sharing your wisdom today on the Thrive State podcast.
Thank you, Dr. V.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if you're finding that this content is really helping you and your family members, please consider supporting our mission and our cause of elevating health, happiness, and human potential for people all over the world. You can do so by making sure that you subscribe to this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family members, and leaving us a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. All these things are going to really help elevate the show and to give us the resources to continue to bring more content just like this to yourself as well as the people that you love. If you haven't already, you might want to consider joining our community. We actually have a community where people get to engage with me in group sessions where we do breath work, meditation, where we do challenges together, really to be able to get us access to health, happiness, human potential so that we could have longevity and performance in our life as well. You can check out our community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. And if you haven't already, pick up a copy of my book, Thrive State. It really gives you all the tools, the pillars that you need to create a blueprint to control the energetics of your life. Who are you? How you show up in the world? The choices that you consistently make create an energy in your body, and you can control this. And when you can control that, you also control the messages you give to your DNA that gives you access, again, to optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. And let me also just share a free gift to you. If you haven't already, please pick up my longevity and performance bundle where I share lecture notes, ebooks, breathwork exercises, and longevity and performance resources at thrivestatestarter.com. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for helping us grow. Remember always, my friends, that you are your best medicine.